Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and we are coordinating the Vermont Forest Industry Network, which, as I mentioned yesterday, we launched a year ago in this room. And so I'm really excited to see so many familiar faces from last year, but also it's just really exciting to see some new faces. So I really just thank all of you for being here. Before we start our program, I do have just a few quick reminders for folks. So if you're a logger or a forester, so if you're a logger looking for LEAP credits, be sure you've signed in at registration, because we'll be collecting that information for the LEAP program. And if you're a forester seeking forester credits, again, make sure you have signed in, and you can get your certificate of attendance at the end today. So just see Cindy at the registration, and she will give those to you. And if there are any questions, just talk with Cindy, and we can always follow up with you afterward. Also, I hope that you've had a chance to go around to see some of our exhibitors and that you've gotten your stamp on your passport. Be sure you've gotten all your stamps and make sure that you've given your passport in to Cindy at registration, because everyone who's filled out all of them, that's visited all of our exhibitors, will be entered into our raffle. At lunch, we are going to give away 4 really cool prizes. We've got a gift certificate to Harvest Equipment. We have a really cool wooden travel mug by Wildwood, Vermont. We have a wonderful bowl from Andrew Pierce Bowls and an incredible cutting board from Clear Lake Furniture. So thank you to all of them for contributing those prizes. And 4 lucky people in this room will be there, but you do have to be there to win. So if you leave early, you're not going to get to bring home a prize. So. Also, check out by 11 o'clock, so if you did stay over, if you haven't checked out, just be sure you do that by 11 o'clock, and we will be taking about a 30-minute break between our morning program here and our breakout sessions, so you should have some time to be able to do that, so be sure you've done that. All right, so yesterday, for those of you who were here, we had a really great conversation about the future of our forests, and I hope that it gave you something to think about in terms of the role that all of us have to play in what that future is going to be. The challenges, but also the opportunities that lie ahead for this industry. And frankly, we're going to, I feel like we want to take that a little step further today and talk about the future of wood. So there's really not, I don't think, a better person in our region to help us have a conversation about the future of wood than our keynote speaker, Donna Cassese. So Donna recently retired after 4 decades at pulp and paper giant Sappi, and now consults for the company and sits on the executive committee of the Maine Forest Economy Growth Initiative. Donna's going to discuss the promising work being done across the globe to develop new and innovative products made from wood, everything from jet fuel to soccer balls to clothing to food additives. You name it, it might be made of wood someday. So Donna has a bachelor's degree in forest management and worked for Sappi for over 40 years. She's had a diverse number of roles within forestry, operations, and manufacturing. After nearly 15 years as a forester in both Maine and Alabama, she transitioned into managerial roles at the Woodyard, waste treatment, pulp sales, and human resources at the Somerset Mill in Skowhegan, Maine. Following those roles, Donna held the position of plant manager at Sappi's Allentown, Pennsylvania converting facility, and then transitioned into the supply chain group at the Somerset Mill. In 2006, Donna became the director of inside sales for Sappi's North American operations, and in 2008, she assumed responsibility for the Westbrook Mill as managing director. In 2014, Donna returned to forestry as the director of wood supply strategy with responsibility for developing and implementing wood supply strategy for Sappi's mills in Maine and Minnesota. In January of 2018, Donna retired and now works as a consultant for Sappi, leading government relations work in Maine. So following Donna's presentation and Q&A, We're going to be facilitating a discussion of potential products in various stages of research, development, and commercialization. So pay close attention, and you'll notice there's some paper and markers on your table, so we'll be using those later. So really think while Donna is talking about what might be some opportunities for us here in Vermont. So with that, I would like to welcome to the stage Donna Cassese.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning. So I won't go to the stage because I'm Italian, I need my hands, and I need to walk around. So hopefully this works for you. So read some of these. Ooh, is this working or not? Okay, so read some of these headlines and what is going on in your mind. What image comes to mind when you think of the paper industry? Dead and dying, a dinosaur, maybe no longer relevant in the computer age. Well, as Christine said, I've worked in this industry for over 40 years, and I think it's both innovative and sexy. So, not to minimize what happened to Maine, we had 6 mills go down basically at the same time within a couple of years and lost 50% of our softwood market. So really very devastating for Maine. The economic impact I want to talk about, which is really kind of interesting because if you read all those headlines.
Your sound is.
Is it? Should I just use the, okay. Thank you. Okay, take 2. How's that? Excellent. Thank you for bearing with the technical difficulties. I think I have a pointer on here. So one of the things that's kind of interesting is that when all these mills went down, people were like, that's it. That's the end of forestry in Maine. Well, kind of interestingly, before the mills went down in 2014, it was a $9.8 billion industry. And after the mills went down, it was still $8.5 billion. So this is a pretty significant industry in Maine, even with those paper mills going down. The economic impact is incredible. 1 out of every 24 jobs in Maine has something to do with the forest industry. And I think more important than anything, and I think folks in this mill will really, in the room will really relate to this, is as you look at those county maps, most of those jobs are in rural Maine. Okay, so there's plenty of jobs in Portland, but there's not many jobs when you go up to Aroostook County or Penobscot or the town that I live in unless you work with the forest industry. So even more important than the jobs is that these give opportunities for people who want to live in rural Maine and for their kids as well. So kind of where does Maine's wood go? About 1/3 is saw logs, about 50% is pulp, about 20% is biomass, and a couple percent kind of for firewood and pellets. And Maine is forest. And so, we had a lot of reaction at the time. Well, I guess that day is done. Well, when your state was 90% forestry, it's not done. That is who you are. And so it really spurred us on to figure out where we needed to go next. The next piece is around growth to drain ratios for all of you who are in the forest part of the industry. For a while there, we were actually cutting more than we were growing. And then we had the mills go down, and now you can see it's going the opposite way. We're growing a lot more than we're harvesting, and so that means we've got an opportunity. So, a number of us came together in the industry and created something called For Maine. I've got some little pamphlets on your tables. And what that is we wanted to develop a forest opportunity roadmap for the state so we could go forward and really increase the value of the forest to Maine. This is really important. It's an industry-led process, and I'll talk in a few minutes about who's involved in that. Our goal is to encourage private investment, and we really wanted to do it with data. So we wanted to identify what are the key opportunities that we have. So if you take a look at this collaboration, we have everybody. We have the loggers associations, we have large landowners, we have small landowners, We have the pulp mills, we have the sawmills, we have the biomass plants. We really pretty much have the whole component of the supply chain. And really what was very unique was our senators came to us and said, we want to support what you do. And so we're very fortunate to have Senators King and Collins who went out and basically got us money. So EDA and FDA both gave us several $1 million so that we could work on collecting the data and figure out what we're going to do next. So the government actually was here to help in this case. Isn't that awesome? So this is a little bit hard to see, and I apologize for that, but I really kind of want to talk about how we set this up. So the first part was to do a global market analysis. And so because we had a fair amount of money, we went through an RFP process and we looked at a global leader who advises forest industry. And we said, we want you to take a look at us, and we want you to be cruel if you need to, and tell us what we're good at, what we're not good at, and really what markets we ought to play. And this really has been the fundamental of all of our work. We did a wood supply analysis because if we're going to attract investment, we need to tell people, here's how much wood is coming along, and that's going to support your capital investment in 20 years or 30 years. We did a stakeholder analysis, so we kind of talked to everybody in the industry and said what's important to you to kind of make sure we had complete buy-on, because if we come up with a plan and nobody supports it, that's not good. Emerging tech was really important for us, and so we actually put together a group of people, not just in Maine, to really understand emerging technology, because everybody wants to sell you something, and they all want government money, and what you find is a lot of people can only make this much of that product, and that's not where we want to be investing money, and we also don't want to be wasting the government money, right? That's all our hard-earned tax dollars. Transportation was really important for us, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and then wood energy. So we kind of are at the point right now where we're working on the goals and strategies and putting together our implementation plan, and we'll talk a little bit in more detail about that. So the first part was the wood supply, and as I mentioned, for us, softwood was a major issue. And so, let's see if I can get this little clip thing to work. We have a lot of softwood. And so this is really what we're taking out of the forest. This is how much is there, and we've got a lot of softwood coming on. So it's really important that we kind of find those markets. Because of the budworm and because of the age class of the forest, we are just going to have an infinite supply of softwood going forward. So this is really important for us to be able to tell our markets. This piece was really important as well, and I come from a very established industry, pulp and paper, and one of the things that I said to have my participation in this is I am kind of really tired of talking about only attracting new investment, forget about the people who've been here for 100 years. And so it was really important for me that part of our philosophy going forward was to make sure we were promoting established industries as well as attracting new investment. So that's really a cornerstone of the work that we're doing. So this again is complicated, and Christine has all this information, and anything that we've done is available for all of you because it's public funding. And so there is an unbelievable amount of data and work that's gone through, and I really welcome you to take a look at it. So this particular one looks super complicated, and it is, but what we said to this global market group is we want you to go out and look at the range of products, dissolving pulp, nanocellulose, fuel, biochar, levulitic acid. Look at all this and see what fits Maine. Okay, not only from a resource standpoint, but how competitive can we be? And the categories were very interesting, and again, I'll apologize that it's small. So the way something gained favor was that it used a lot of wood. Okay, so we really didn't care about getting something in that just used a small amount because we've got all that extra softwood. How competitive were we? And so was Maine competitive? That gained a product extra points. The other thing was product life cycle. So if we might be really competitive in saw timber as an example, and that didn't have a lot of increased market share going forward, then that would get less points than something that could really kind of grow and really create to kind of take a look, and the other one was labor. And so the more labor an industry took, the better, because we could employ more people in rural Maine. So it was a very comprehensive look at all these products and which would be the ones that would kind of help meet our goals. So the global market assessment basically said that there were top categories for us to look at. And so sawn timber, a traditional industry in Maine, came out on top. Dissolving pulp, and I'll talk about that a little bit more for folks, was really positive because it could use pulpwood, it could use softwood, and it was very much a growth industry, and it was very high value, so that came up very high. OSB, nanocellulose, LVL, and MDF always came up. And then it also said in terms of emerging markets, pyrolysis oil, which is simply fuel oil, nanocellulose and cellulosic sugars were all really good fits for Maine. And part of that reason is because we have all these pulp mills, a lot of these can be bolted on to an existing pulp mill. So not only are you making craft pulp, you're actually making products that have a really high value. So these were all kind of the feedback that they gave us. In terms of competitive advantage, we have lots of softwood. It's going to be moderately priced compared to other places in the world. We've got the logistic infrastructure. We've got the supply chain. So Russia may have a lot of softwood, but they can't figure out how to harvest it and get it out. So guess what? Maine's got a competitive advantage there. Our large private ownership was also seen as incredibly unique. So as you know, there's some landowners in Maine who own 1 million acres of land. So let's say we're trying to attract investors into Maine, and they have to buy 500,000 tons of wood. Well, they can either go to thousands of small woodlot owners, or they can go to 2 or 3 big landowners and make a deal. So the idea that we have large land ownership and privately owned, I've worked in Minnesota before, there's large land ownership, but it's publicly owned, and you never know whether the government is going to let you cut or not. So that whole idea of the private, which is certainly something Vermont has as well, is very important. The proximity, and I think someone talked about this yesterday, we're really close to New York City, and so the idea that we could make things and we could give them into a market was really, really important for Maine. And then a really unique competitive advantage for us is the University of Maine. And so the research that's going on in the University of Maine is world class. And so a lot of the companies would like to come into Maine because they know that they could have really incredible research done and top-notch, and that's not true of every place. Transportation was really key for us because that whole northern Maine piece, when all those mills shut down, all of them were in northern Maine. And so now you've got people who are trucking wood 6, 7, 8, 9 hours on roads that never had to have that traffic before. So we sat down with the DOT and we talked about what our priorities were for fixing up the roads. And they have just been tremendous to work with. We all have the same problems, right? You know, people aren't driving as much, or the fuel efficiency is better. So how do we get the funds to do that? But what we did agree to was, here's number 1, here's number 2, this bridge is in bad shape, get that one next. Wood energy, and I know this is a common problem that problem or opportunity, right? Depends on how you woke up that day. These are really important for us because we can't manage our forests well without having a market for these low-grade woods. And in Maine, what was happening is we had a lot of standalone boilers, and standalone boilers can only make energy, and they're not taking advantage of the heat that's produced. And so if you look at those numbers, a typical standalone boiler will have about a 50% efficiency. If you can combine that with heat, combine heat and power, CHP, you can raise that efficiency to 75%. So that's typical of what you'd see at a pulp mill because we're using that heat for the process, we're using the heat buildings. But what opportunities could we have that would also provide heat as well as electricity? Emerging technologies, and I've kind of talked about this before, this whole bolt-on is really an intriguing concept, and a lot of mills in the world, particularly Scandinavian mills, are producing sugars, are producing chemicals. Sappi has some plants in South Africa that are doing that as well, and we think there's some great opportunities there because you've already got the infrastructure. So if we want to have somebody invest, they don't have to invest in a waste treatment plant. They don't have to invest in a whole lot of site permitting. All of that stuff is done. and then it makes the pulp and paper mill or the sawmill a lot more viable because they have other products. What really got us into trouble in Maine, frankly, was that we were a one-trick pony. All we did was printing and publishing. And so when that went down, so went Maine. So what's really important for our future is to be very diverse. The last one is also really important is we have an entity in Maine called the Maine Technology Institute. It's funded by the state. We get about $7 million. I'm on the board of MTI to give to innovative products and to startups. And so we went to MTI and we said, you know, these 4 towns, Bucksport, Madison, Lincoln, all these towns who lost mills, they've got people traipsing up to their door and trying to sell them, you know, the 5-inch cup of whatever they're making. If you could just give us millions of dollars, we'll build a plant here. And we felt that was really, the towns just weren't able to cope with that. They don't have the expertise, but of course they're desperate to have somebody come in and invest money. And so we actually hired MTI to take a look at the technologies, and we have people from all over the country working on this and doing a deep dive and saying, this has got traction. You know, we might be a year away, but this is going to be something that's real and that they can make money, and they've got a good technological process. So we're really excited about this. And again, I think there's a lot of information that we can share with Vermont on this as well, because you get a lot of snake oil salespeople once all this stuff starts happening. So consumer demand for bio-based products. I have a tagline, and that tagline says, almost anything that you can make with petroleum, you can make from wood. And that is absolutely true. And for those of you who are here last year, now you're having to suffer through me 2 years in a row, you saw a bunch of products that are coming out of there, and I do want to talk about a few of these. The Lego company is very interesting, right? We're all tripping over Legos with our children and our grandchildren. The Lego company has committed by 2030 that their raw material will be bio-based as opposed to petroleum-based. And so think about the exciting opportunities, but that's the type of commitment that we're getting from companies who want to go completely bio-based and get out of petroleum. So that just says so many great things about wood. There's a sneaker on the left-hand side. I handed out a few of these, but our company that's in Westbrook, Maine, we have a 1905 paper machine. The mill was built in 1854, and we make a product called release paper. And so the 1905 paper machine makes the paper. We move it to another department, and it's a special coating, and then we imprint it with an embossed roll so that there's a pattern on the paper. And then once we have that embossed roll, we sell it to people who then use it as a reusable mold. And so as an example, Westbrook happens to be 40% of the world's supply of release paper, and your dashboard in your car is made from release paper, okay? So the pattern paper is there, you pour the vinyl and the urethane on it, and you peel it away, and that's what's used. So 40% of you drove here today in a vehicle that had dashboard made from Maine paper. How cool is that? We're doing a number of other things that we're pretty excited about at Sappi. We've got 50 full-time scientists. Right now we're looking at medical diagnostic testing that we could actually make micro patterns in paper. And instead of you driving to Burlington for some medical test, you would be able to do it in your doctor's office because it needed such small quantities of the material. So there's just some incredible things that are going out there. You see the Coca-Cola bottle, Poland Springs would be another example. That can be made of wood, and it will be made of wood. And so just think about the opportunities there. You see that nice little yogurt container there. We've got a mill in Minnesota that makes a product called dissolving pulp. And dissolving pulp is used in food products. So you're eating some wood, you may not have realized that. Yogurt, a lot of these low-fat products actually have dissolving pulp in them to give you a better mouthfeel because they're not very fatty. Didn't know that, huh? And the other thing is clothing. So my top here actually was made from dissolving pulp. So if you have any kind of clothes that are made from modal or tencel or rayon, believe it or not, you're wearing wood. And so, you're wearing it, you're eating it. Tons of exciting stuff is going on in that space. Forest economy communities, and I know this this is something that's really important to Vermont as well. We really started this whole process because we were very concerned about Bucksport, Madison, East Millinocket, all these towns who had lost their major employer. And so part of the work that we're doing with For Maine is actually working with the communities. So we're providing them help and support. We're trying to work through whether someone is coming to them and trying to sell them snake oil or whether in fact there's a real opportunity. And the towns have been incredibly appreciative of having this kind of support and this kind of analysis. So we've actually had a couple bills in the legislature that have gone through that are helping them with some of their kind of environmental issues so they can get these sites so they can be used again. Our vision is that, I told you at the beginning of the talk that we're an $8.5 billion industry. We've decided to put our mark on the tree, so to speak, that we are going to be a $12 billion industry. And we're going to get there. And one of the stories I'll tell you that I think is important is you have to set your goal. And so we looked at Michigan, we looked at other countries, that was part of the work too, I didn't mention, we looked at other countries and states who had developed programs like this. And the state of Michigan came out, and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but they said, this is where we are, and this is where we're going to be, and everybody signed on to that, and guess what? They're making progress on that goal. And so we said, you know, we're going to be big, we're going to be bold, and we're going to get to the 12 billion. And because we have that out there, now we evaluate everything in terms of is that getting us closer to that goal, and we really have terrific support in the state of Maine. It can be done, and the best companies, including countries like Scandinavia, have done this. So recommendations, I'll go through this fairly quickly, but the first one was kind of you can't achieve what you can't measure, so we want to get to 12 billion by 2025, and I'm positive that we're going to do that. We want to do that in a sustainable way, and so our messaging is a lot about how much wood there is out there and how there is more growing than what we're harvesting, because again, we want buy-in from everybody. If you go to the southern part of the state, I don't know if it's the same in Vermont, but folks in Portland don't quite understand the tree stuff as easily as they do in northern Maine, and so we really want to be sure that that's part of our messaging. Preparing for the workforce, and you guys have the same, I heard that yesterday about the concerns about the workforce. It's really been tough in Maine because of all those horrible headlines, right? So you're a parent, do you want your kids going to the pulp and paper industry? What, are you kidding me? So a lot of our work right now is doing talks like this and really saying, look how exciting this is. Look how sexy this industry is. You know, you could be replacing plastic with wood. Now that gets kids excited, right? And so we've got to really spend a lot of time messaging that. Increase Maine's economy in those rural communities. We talked about that. We're working with public sector. We're working with the private sector. We've been together now for 3.5 years, and it's unbelievable that we're all still at the same table. We're all still talking to each other, and we don't agree on 100%, but we agree on about 95%. And so it's really taken all of us together carrying this consistent message that is working. So we've done all the data. Now we're working on the marketing piece. One of the things we found, and I don't know if this is similar in Vermont, is we have a Maine International Trade Center. We've got a Maine company who looks for investments. We've got the Department of Economic and Community Development. And they weren't really working as well together as we should in terms of speaking with one voice. And so one investment company might go to one person, but not to the other. And so we're kind of bringing all those entities together so it's a one-stop shop. And even some simple things like we would have an investment company come to Maine and talk to Maine International Trade Center, and they would want an NDA, and then they couldn't talk to anybody else. And so now we're saying, if you come to Maine and you want to talk about economic development with kind of public agencies, you are going to sign an NDA with all of us, so we can all help you. And we're really starting to get very active. We just came back from a conference in Amsterdam. We're going out there with, we're telling our story, baby. And you know, we want you, and you need to come to Maine. And from each of those fairs that we go to, or conferences, we're bringing back at least 2 or 3 contacts where they come to Maine and kind of they're kicking the tires. And so it's important to get out there because in states like Iowa, as an example, they go out there, they've got all these fancy things, and they have your story to tell. Be sure you get out of the state. So if all we're doing is talking to ourselves, that ain't gonna get us anyplace, right? So you've got to have a specific marketing plan of where you're gonna go. So now the headlines have changed. I told you that you're going to start feeling excited about what's going on. And so most of you have heard some of this story. Verso is bringing back a paper machine. Sappi just spent $200 million. Nine Dragons Paper bought the mill in Rumford and is investing heavily. And they also, this is very exciting, bought the mill in Old Town, and they're going to turn that into a softwood mill. And so they'll be taking softwood. So there's really just some very exciting times in the state of Maine. Again, I don't expect you to read through all this, but within the last few years, we've had $677 million invested in the state of Maine, and that's everything from sawmills to energy plants to pulp and paper companies. And what's not on here, which has just happened 2 weeks ago, which we're all jumping up and down about this, is the Maine Technology Institute just gave $750,000 to each of these two companies. One is called Biofine, and they are opening up a facility right next to the Westbrook Mill that's going to make fuel oil. And they've actually partnered with Dead River, so they've got an offtake agreement, and they are going to be building that within the next year. So we're very excited about the first fuel oil kind of happening in Maine. There's lots of opportunities there. The one kind of watch out that we're a little concerned about, and I'm sure you guys are aware, is the way the legislation is written right now, the renewable fuel standards, and what's called RINs, where you get extra money for producing bio-based oils. It is only for plantations forestry. So for those of us in New England, not so good, is it? So we're doing a lot of work, and Senators King and Collins are working with EPA, and we're hoping that we can get an interpretation of the rules that would say that natural stands count. We really don't want to go for a legislative change because all those corn guys and gals in Iowa, will immediately put up a big fuss. So there's one little wrinkle. And then the other investment, which is going into Madison Mill, is wood-based insulation. And this one is outstanding. You've been able to buy wood-based insulation in Europe for about 10 years. And these two guys got friendly with some people over there, and they decided they wanted to sell their equipment for a variety of reasons. And so in the next year, we're going to be installing with this company a process that will make wood-based insulation. And so no more fiberglass. Very exciting, about 100 jobs. And what's really heartwarming is that a lot of the people who had worked at the Madison Mill are getting hired back for this particular job. So, lots of exciting things happening. So I'm going to end. For those of you who's familiar with the movie The Graduate, all right, so it's nice to see there's a few people who are old enough to remember that movie. So I'm going to kind of change the wording around a little bit. I want to tell you one word. Just one word. Wood. There's a great future in wood. Think about it. Almost anything that can be made out of petroleum can be made out of wood. Thank you.
So we do have some time for some Q&A with Donna, and so I think what we'll do is we have a second mic we're going to float it around. So if you have a question, raise your hand, but we'd like to use the mic just so everyone can hear. So if people have a question for Donna, let's take probably, like 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So if we have a question, I'll go use my mic while we're waiting, right?
Thank you, Donna. Mike Snyder, Commissioner and State Forester. Welcome everyone.
Thank you.
Great talk. I particularly appreciate the positivity, as I'll call it. It's really nice to hear. Maybe two quick questions while others are thinking of questions. In your opening slide early on about your unique collaboration, I noticed no Maine Forest Service. A lot of partners with the feds.
They're in there.
The government was here to help. So the state was there as well. Excellent. Lastly, I agree. I've been trying to say almost anything that can be made from plastic can be made from wood. Thank you for that. When I say that, people look at me like I have three heads. So it's nice to see examples and all. And can you speak to that and like maybe how to have them? Maybe are you finding people look at you like you have three heads, or how can you keep going with this and want to see it all the way back to the woods and keep working?
Thank you, great question. I'm not a chemie, I'm just an old forester, so I won't go through a lot of the chemistry, but I think the thing to remember is for all of you foresters, right, lignin, just think about how rich lignin can be, and think about lignin and burning lignin, and we burn that anyway in the pulp and paper mills because that's how we get our energy when you get the recovery boiler liquid that's going in. So a good one is just to say lignin, okay? So lignin is something you can burn, and that is an opportunity to get the oils. From the chemistry part, which is a lot of the plastics, is sugars. And so there's also a lot of sugars in this wood. And so it's really kind of breaking apart the wood. When we cook wood down to make pulp, we're not really cooking it down all that much because we want the strength properties for the paper. And so this is basically cooking the hell out of wood and getting it down to its basics. And, I think that's part of the story. I think you don't want to get too complicated. I do think that you want to kind of show the products that right now are being made out of wood. And, Bates College is burning fuel oil right now out of wood. And what that means is it's a lot simpler for people. And the other very exciting part, because Sappi has looked into this as well, is that the fuel oil does not take pulpwood, it can take biomass. And so I think what's really important for us is to take that really low value stuff that we want to get out of the forest to improve forest management and be able to make something like that fuel oil. So I think it's just changing the conversation and just kind of a few little facts about wood, right? Just kind of think about it and getting that out there because we do, I'm, as you can tell, very bullish. I think it's just started, it's just so exciting. And it's so important to tell that story because I want the 12-year-olds and 18-year-olds to go, that's where I would work. Like, that is so cool. How great would that be if I could help this place alive? You have a great story. Yeah. Sorry.
I had a quick question. How much of Maine's wood are they importing from other areas, other states that they're using?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. What I'll say is that, and maybe kind of a Sappi example, is we used to buy wood from Vermont, as you know, and New Hampshire. And for a while there, because there was so much extra wood in Maine, we stopped buying from kind of Canada, New Hampshire, Vermont. Now it's gone the other way. So, we're talking about opening up, Woodyards again. So I think it is absolutely going the other way and starting. We put on probably 1 million to 1.5 million capacity just with some of the stuff I just talked about here. And so we've now got to go out of state or a little bit out of country to get some of that wood. So I think that those trucks will be rolling east again if they haven't already started doing that. Does that answer your question?
I'm just curious of the total volume that Maine is using right now.
Very high. I would, and again, please don't quote me on this, I'd say that it's somewhere in the 90% range in terms of what...
Using their own wood.
Using our own wood, right. But that doesn't always happen. So if you're Verso or you're Nine Dragons now, why would I buy wood from Aroostook County when I could buy wood in New Hampshire and Vermont because I'm further west? So that depends on where your mill is
So you're
located.
thinking just for Sappi as for how much wood?
Yes, but again, if you're starting to look at those mills on the border, they absolutely buy wood in Vermont and New Hampshire every day. Yeah. Yeah. How about I work this? Okay.
Eric DeLuca with the Working Enterprise Board and Leverage Point Consulting. Just building on Mike's first question, could you say a little bit about building trust between the public sector and the private sector and maybe some milestones as that process developed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say that it really started with our senators, and they did a super job of kind of coming to everybody one-on-one and saying, hey, Donna, would you buy into something like this? And, we will help you with money, because for Sappi, you might say, why do I want more competition for wood, right? But so one of our concerns after all this, all these disclosures happened is we saw people going out of business, we saw people selling equipment. What's most important for all of us in the industry is to have a healthy overall industry where there are homes for all the products that come out of the forest. And so, from the government standpoint, we got money from the feds, which was awesome. And I didn't mention the Maine Forest Service, and I should have. They were an integral part of the process in terms of working with us on the wood supply piece. And they will also be an integral part of the process as we talk to investors. Because if you talk to an investor, if I'm the person who's trying to get them to invest, they might not believe me that I have that much wood. But they'll talk to the Maine Forest Service and they'll talk to the public entities and they'll look at that. The other thing that the public was really, the economic development, really, really important, was that they could tell people what are the tax advantages, what are the credits you can get, all those things. So it's a package when you go to get an investment. And some of this investment can be in an existing site. It doesn't have to be brand new. So I think it was, the senators did a great job of starting to get together, and we were all, just like the people are in this room, I sat here and listened to all the discussions yesterday. You all care about, the health of the Vermont forests and the health of the economy, and that is something that you all have together. So with a logger, I might disagree on the price that we're paying at the gate today, but on the other hand, we all care about the same thing, and I think that's what got us together, is we could grow this as opposed to letting it kind of fall away. So that's the secret ingredient, is build on that commitment that you have. And I'd say, frankly, the only area we've ever kind of had some disagreements about was really more on some of the energy stuff. You really want to give incentives for renewable energy. That, depending on whether you're a mill that buys or doesn't buy power, but that became such a small little thing that we all go places together and we talk as one, and just build on that spirit that you all have, which is we care about Vermont, we care about Vermont forests, and we care about rural economies. I mean, that's the other part that drives all of us is, again, people in Portland, God love them, they have plenty of places to work, but I want to see people in rural Maine have an opportunity to raise their kids and send them to college. And I saw that disappearing with the closure of some of these mills. Great question. Yeah.
Hi, Joe Short with the Northern Forest Center. I have two questions. First is on mass timber, which Christine mentioned yesterday. Maine seems particularly well positioned for it across the Northern Forest states. Sawn timber, which is the main ingredient in it, was on your list. And I know a couple companies have tire kicked in Maine about building a CLT facility. I'm curious about how that is stacked up on the list of priorities. Second is workforce, and reaching that $12 billion growth target. And we heard about it yesterday, and we see it across the entire region, at all nodes in the supply chain. Worker shortages. Curious what emerged from the Fort Maine process. Any specific ideas around that piece, and where's the pipeline of the workforce to help meet that target?
Both great questions. So on the cross-laminated timber, we're close. We're kind of like the woman who almost is engaged, but not quite. We keep working on it, and we're getting really close. So something's going to happen, but we don't have the ring on our finger yet. So I would say that one of the things that's really attractive, and this would be totally true for Vermont, maybe in spades, is that any of the CLT places really want to co-locate with the sawmills. And so what a great opportunity, again, to make the sawmill stronger. And so it's just a matter of time. And as you know, some of that, there's lots of great technologies out there, but it's all about offtake. Who's going to buy it? And so that's why I'm excited about the biofuel, is we have the offtake. With the CLT, I heard yesterday maybe the state of Vermont is going to build a building. That's great, but that's what we need is the off-takers. And so I think that's the work that we have to do, is whether we incentivize people to do it, or we work on some of the rules around architecture. We need to figure out how to get those first few buildings built, and then the CLT will be there. But I think it's particularly good for sawmills. And the other thing I didn't mention is for sawmills, we also are very focused on finding outlets for their chips, right? Because as the paper mills didn't buy as many of those chips, Again, some of the jet fuel and some of these other areas we think are opportunities. So we want to be sure that our sawmills stay healthy by having an outlet. The second one around the workforce, it sounds esoteric, but I think it's first. You got to get people excited about the possibility of working before you can do the recruiting in some ways. And so we are going to be spending money around the sexy part of the industry. Did you know that you could make your Poland Spring water bottle out of wood? Did you know? And so I think what we've got to do is change our image first, and have people also see it as a long-term career. Because if you read all that stuff on the first slide I had, hell, I don't want to go into forestry if I think it's only going to be another couple of years of employment. And so I think it's really around the messaging, around the positive part. I'll just tell you kind of a little story. Is I did a TED Talk last fall, and the audience was mostly hipsters. And they came up to me afterwards and were just like, oh, we didn't think anything was happening in Maine with wood anymore. Like, this is so encouraging or whatever. So I think it's kind of, we're just talking to the wrong people, right? And so where are the 30-something hipsters, and where are the parents, and where are these people? So we've got to target, and that's the 4 Maine work. We're going to target who we're going to talk to. We're going to have first-class imaging. We're going to do the videos. We're going to have all that. And we really have been beneficiaries of some of the funding. But again, for the state of Maine to go from an $8.5 to a $12 billion business, like, that's a good investment, right? And you're helping people in rural Maine. So I don't know if that helped, but probably not as specific as you want. Yeah.
Rob O'Halloran, consulting forester, we met last year.
We did.
So my question, you've talked about all these great innovative products that are out there, and then you've alluded to the idea of these snake oil products.
Yeah.
Would you just give us some examples of processes and products that you put in that category?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I won't give any names, or else I will be in big fat trouble. But what I'd say is, because of all the incentives, the RINs and all this kind of free money from DOE, there's a ton of people out there who all just are this close to producing something. And so I'd say, like, the number one watch out for me is that people will tell you that they use biomass, that they use, kind of the poor quality. And then you start looking into it, and you find out that all their research to date has been on top quality pulpwood. And in fact, if they actually used biomass and it had some bark in it or other extraneous material, that their efficiency would be about 50%. So to me, that's just a perfect example, is someone is going to tell you something, and many people told us they used biomass. And then when we really started looking into we're going to show up and we're going to look at what you're putting into the fuel oil or the chemicals or whatever you're making, it turns out that it wasn't always the kind of wood that we thought it was going to be. So that's the work that we've had MTI do, and again, some scientists from other countries to kind of verify what folks are saying. And it doesn't mean they're not going to get there, so I don't want to say that, you probably shouldn't have used the word snake oil. These are people who really care about what they're doing, and they're so anxious to get traction. But unfortunately, the process they have right now is only viable if they use something that we don't necessarily want them to use. I don't want them to be using pulpwood, right? I want that to go to the highest and best use. And the other thing is, and I'll tell you, my CEO of my company says this all the time, is, Donna, I'm not going to invest any capital money if the only way I can make money is incentives. I might do it to help me recover, for the first few years, my capital investment in the fuel oil, the sugars, or nanocellulose. But that can't be the only way I can make money. So I'd say that's the other thing that's kind of concerning. All this money is great, but when you look at their numbers, can they actually make money without having those incentives? That's what scares me. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah. One more question. Right here.
I'm curious as to what emphasis you put on developing products that result in long-term carbon storage versus conversion of biological carbon to fat.
emphasis one way or another. I think that the work right now is really around how you get wood into something that can replace a petroleum-based product. So I'd say that I don't know if anybody starts out their research that way. Sorry. All right, that's it.
Okay, well, thanks again to Donna for a really interesting talk on the future of wood, and I think it's pretty clear that there is a great future for wood, and that there are a lot of opportunities. And it was really interesting listening to Donna talk about the work in Maine. I feel like the work in Vermont, we have been doing a lot of similar work. In fact, the Vermont Forest Industry Network really came about through a lot of the work that the Working Lands Enterprise Board put together a few years ago. We did a forest sector systems analysis that really, did a lot of stakeholder interviews and a lot of work to try to figure out, what direction do we need to take so that we can keep a robust economy, forest economy, and keep this entire supply chain going. So I think it's interesting because as Donna and I had talked about prior to her talk, there are a lot of similarities. We are a regional economy, and Joe Short at the Northern Forest Center always reminds me we are part of a regional economy, and we truly are. So I think all of the great work happening in Maine, a lot of that is really very applicable to us here in Vermont. There are some differences, but I think we can learn a lot from them, and perhaps vice versa. So working together, I think as a region, is going to be good for everyone. So what I would like for us to do, we're going to take about 20 minutes or 20 minutes, maybe 25. We'll see how we go. At your tables, we have some large paper and some markers. So what I want to do, and actually I'm just realizing I need to put a couple of questions. I want everyone to work with me. Can you pull up? There's a slide that has some questions. What I'd like us to do for the next 30 minutes is work at your table. If somebody at your table can volunteer to be the scribe, to take some notes, and you'll use your paper, obviously, to do that. What I want us to do is think about what Donna just talked about, and from your vantage point, what you know about the opportunities and the challenges for us in Vermont. And as she talked about these products that are coming down the pike, are there some that kind of jump out at you as being real potentials for us in Vermont that we could actually build on? So what top 2 or 3 products may have the greatest opportunity? What's needed for those products to succeed as a Vermont-based business? And then what questions remain that we should answer over the coming year? So what we're going to do is, at the end of this, we'll report out a couple of tables. We may not have time. We'll just maybe do 2 or 3, depending on time. But we're going to collect all of this because, again, our steering committee is going to meet in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be doing a debrief on the summit. And we really want to know where we think we should be spending our time as a network to try to move some of this stuff forward. So I would like for, again, the next 20 minutes, if you could just work amongst yourselves, answer these 3 questions, and then we'll get back together and we'll do a few report outs. What's that? Right on the flip chart. Yeah, right on the flip chart too. The white paper that's at your table. summary of what you discussed and touch on the 3 questions at hand. So let me get a hand raise from a table that wants to report out. Oh, we've got one back here. All right, we'll get the mic over to you so we can hear.
Here's just one thing.
Yeah, well, because we've got, just a few minutes, so just keep it short.
We came up with stuff that actually we started talking about last year. Biochar is one, combined heat and power facilities, a CLT manufacturing, and just generally biofuels. And we've already laid out what would be needed: markets, money, permit reform. And then one questions we have up for the biochar. There are grants out right now for studies to see if biochar will remove phosphorus from the land or possibly be put into feed so that you can capture it before it gets on the land. If those prove to be successful, then biochar could be on every cornfield in Vermont. Combined heat and power, again, permit reform. Right now, if you want to build one of those, you got to go through 2 Act 250 processes. And BWA has already testified in front of the resources people in Montpelier this year that they need to cut down on the number of times you've got to go through a Act 250 type process if you're going to build those facilities. CLT manufacture, need money, permitting again, whether or not you can get other kinds of wood certified for use in structural. Right now, the only thing in the Northeast that you can use is spruce fir, but you could be using hemlock, you could be using pine, you could be using larch and tamarack, but right now they're not certified under the structural rules, so you can't use them. And last but not least, you're just biofuels, just in general, permanent pellets, liquid fuels potentially from a biochar plant, and the same thing would go for them on everything else. Here we are.
Great, thank you so much. Who else, what other table would like to give a rundown of what you discovered? Oh, Bravo back in the corner.
Well, we'll concur, and just wanted to add. Oh, now I have a microphone. So, just the idea that in Vermont, the idea of building like a large-scale jet fuel facility probably isn't going to. Montpelier's idea of permit reform is making it more difficult for us to do this. So the reality is we're not going to have that. But something like, water bottles made out of bioplastic, that kind of scale and packing materials. But then we're also going to concur with the idea of larger scale with energy products. And then the other thing we wanted to add was the idea of state encouragement versus discouragement for some of the permit reform, which might have been mentioned, and empowering people with there are people that have ideas. They need to be empowered to bring them to market and bring them to fruition.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see, we've got a table up here in the front. I think it's table 5.
We had what might be sort of an unconventional response here, which was one of our top products would be good logs. There you go. So, if you think about the whole global market and what Vermont might specialize in, it's probably very high quality logs. It can be mostly across all species, but hardwood probably more than anything. Like that's what we do that other parts of the world don't. And we talked about sort of how to get there. It's tending young forests. It's something that I've been trying to kind of beat the drum on a little bit, but we have a lot of regenerating forests and a huge amount of opportunities to grow more really good wood faster. And we should be trying to do that. So that was kind of our big product and opportunity. And the question to remain would be, who's going to do this and how are we going to get more of it out in the ground and how are we going to get more foresters doing TSI work and tending forests to grow really high quality trees that pay money all the time.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody have a different type of product or had a different type of conversation that you want to share about? Oh, we got one right over here.
talked about one really important product being partnership, and that Vermont is a small state, and though we have a really strong forest industry, that thinking about what people have been saying this morning around a regional economy and regional partnerships, and making sure we really have a really strategic focus on working across the northern forest to grow the whole industry would be really important to us, including things like research and education, really investing in individuals and the workforce that will kind of bring the industry along. We also talked about the construction industry in general, and just that as an opportunity for continuing to develop new products and more forest-based products.
Excellent. Okay, we got time for one more. Looks like Eric.
So we had two angles on the first question. One was potentially lower volume product areas that could increase marketing and awareness. So looking at the spirits and craft beer industry with, for instance, whiskey barrel businesses owned by veterans, or the tap handle businesses, things like that could, again, get it into the line of folks that are already interested in Vermont, being attracted to Vermont from other product areas. And then looking at the low-grade markets and the cross-laminated timber opportunities, LPL opportunities, plywood, other framing materials, that space on the volume side. And then the question of packaging and substitution of petroleum-based packaging opportunities. So the questions were legislation favoring wood products and suppressing unsustainable raw materials. What would that look like? Research at the university level for emerging tech, and while also marketing existing wood products, and then thinking about sort of the different types of funding streams for the research, with federal funding potentially being more having an appetite for the pure early stage, and then state level at the go-to-market side of the research. And then questions were what avenues of public outreach about the forest industry are most effective and efficient? How do we make it fashionable to replace current products with wood-based products? How can video be used to accomplish outreach goals? How do we incentivize investment within existing businesses towards the use of raw materials? And thinking about folks like a Unilever, like large-scale businesses that might be influenced like by Ben and Jerry's to swap out like petroleum-based like shampoo bottles, and have, if there were a wood-based product that could do that, to get one or two early adopters at scale that could show what could be done with some of the packaging substitution. Because I know there's a lot of anxiety on the food side about the use of petroleum-based products for packaging, and yet how necessary they seem to be right now, where there's no alternative, like based on food safety or concerns in the supply chain of maintaining the quality of the food.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. So we are about out of time for this program, but I want to make sure that leave your pieces of paper on your table. We're going to collect those because, again, we're going to compile all of this. And I'm really just thrilled that Donna, and all the work that's happening in Maine, I think we have a lot that we can share and look at. And so a lot of that homework has been done, and we really want to take a hard look at what do we want to work on coming into this next year. So thank you all for all of your input on that. So we're going to have a 30-minute break. Again, if you haven't checked out, please make sure you do that by 11. And then make sure you've gone to all the exhibitors and gotten your stamps and get those in. And then from 11 to 12:30, we're going to do our breakouts and then have lunch and win some raffle prizes. So thanks very much.